Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, more commonly referred to as Donkey Kong 94 to distinguish it from the many other games that share its name, is a game that's gone mostly forgotten over the years, and it really shouldn't have. Recognized at the time as being perhaps the best DK game of its era, and the predecessor to the much more widely known Mario vs. Donkey Kong games on the GBA, this game still has a lot to offer even to this day. At first blush, when you boot it up, this seems to be a straightforward port of the arcade Donkey Kong to Game Boy. A decidedly uninteresting venture to be sure, and not a horribly uncommon path for developers at the time to take on the Game Boy. But after you make it through that introductory world, you're immediately dumped into far more interesting puzzle-like scenarios that require not only platforming skill, but thinking your way through things. To support this, the game includes a bunch of unique power-ups that allow you to do things like build bridges and ladders on the fly, as well as a set of environmental elements like wires that Mario can fly off to even higher heights. Very quickly, even in the first real world, the game becomes about looking at the level layout and planning out your way to the goal before you move at all. Sometimes you can certainly manage to blunder your way through on a first try, especially early on, without realizing what the game actually wanted you to figure out. But as time goes on, that becomes increasingly difficult, and most levels will at least take you a handful of tries. Thankfully, the game isn't particularly stingy with extra lives to accommodate this style of play. When you finish a run of 4 stages, you get the amount of time left on each stage added up and converted into lives, and you get an opportunity to save, which prevents you from ever falling too far back if you run out of lives. In addition, if you collect all 3 bonus items in a single stage, you'll get to play a gambling mini-game. Now, it's not the most important thing in the world, so I mostly just grabbed the ones that were on my way, instead of trying to make a point of it to grab every single one of them. I rarely hit any issues with running out of lives, and never hit any problems throughout the whole game that felt like I was being knocked way back, due to a particularly difficult challenge walling off my progress. Like the best puzzle platformers, whether they came out decades ago or just last week, Donkey Kong 94 has some regularly occurring incredible moments of realization, where I would finally figure out the intended path to solving a puzzle, or how a new mechanic functioned, and it's those moments that are what really make the game, that keep you going. Without them, the puzzles would get very stale very quickly. But with them, you never stop having a great time, even when the game is at its absolute hardest. And to be sure, Donkey Kong 94 is a game that very much knows what it is doing when it comes to puzzle progression, and it does a great job of introducing its new concepts in gradual ways, while also making sure that any given concept doesn't wear out its welcome, beyond a very strong basic core of mechanics that do exist through the whole game. It doesn't waste a ton of effort on constantly throwing new mechanics at you, however, choosing instead to put fun new twists on existing mechanics instead. This can sometimes lead to you not really knowing what to do, but it also creates new opportunities for the aforementioned realizations. In general, I was honestly really quite impressed with the flow of the levels. They got increasingly difficult, albeit with a quite gradual ramp that felt perfectly comfortable, then really spiked in difficulty in the penultimate world, and finally got to a point in the last world where the game became all about precision platforming, in a way that it had never demanded up until that point. And those levels really felt like a slow approach up to the final boss fight that was completely different all over again. That being said, despite a lot of care going into this game's level flow, and despite my liking that flow a whole lot, like a lot of older games, you should really make sure you read the manual. You may be able to make it through most of the game just fine, but there are some certain mechanics you'll have to figure out, that there's no way you'd figure out naturally. So make sure to take a good long look at that little book at least a few times while you're playing the game, especially if you hit something that you feel like you don't really understand. At the end of the day, this game still holds up excellently. This is very easily a game that could still be released as a modern puzzle platformer and I think still be beloved. If you liked the later Mario vs. Donkey Kong games this inspired, or really have any love for puzzle platformers at all, Donkey Kong for the Game Boy is still a joy to play and absolutely worth a look today.